Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to tackle one of humanity's biggest dreams, living forever. But we're going to look at it through the lens of intelligence frame theory. And trust me, it might just change how you see everything.
So let's just jump right in. We're all captivated by the idea of eternal life, right? But what if getting what we want is actually a nightmare in disguise? What if the very thing that makes you you is the one thing that makes an infinite life completely unbearable?
And that question leads us straight to what we can call the immortality paradox. See, our minds, our consciousness, they feel limitless, like we could just keep learning and creating forever. But our bodies, well, they're painfully temporary. And this creates this huge fundamental conflict right at the core of who we are. So really get our heads around this, intelligence frame theory gives us this amazing framework. It basically says we're not one single unified being. Nope. Instead, every one of us is made up of two distinct and often competing intelligences, and they're operating on totally different schedules with completely different goals.
So let's meet these two minds, shall we? Because understanding this dual frame setup is absolutely the key to figuring out why living forever might actually be a curse.
First up, you've got the biological frame, or the BF. Think of this as the ancient, primal hardware our bodies run on. Its programming is literally written in our DNA, and it's been fine-tuned over millions of years of evolution. Its one and only mission is brutally simple: survive and make more of itself. It's all about instinct and genes and pure physiology. And then there's the cognitive frame, the CF. This is the new kid on the block, evolutionarily speaking. It runs on our neural networks, and it speaks the language of symbols, culture, and ideas. Its goal isn't just to survive. It wants to understand, to build a story, to find meaning. This frame, well, this is the one that feels like you. And wow, when you put them side by side, you really see how they are just worlds apart. The BF is playing the super long game of evolution, totally driven by instinct. But the CF, it's living in the moment, driven by curiosity and the search for meaning. You've basically got a biological machine built for one thing, procreation, carrying around a mind that's built for something else entirely, exploration. And this right here illustrates the central, almost tragic problem. Our two internal systems are completely out of sync. The biological frame, our physical body, is at its absolute peak in our 20s and 30s. Prime time for having kids. But our cognitive frame, our wisdom, our understanding of the world, it's just hitting its stride in our 50s and 60s. So just as our mind is getting hungrier than ever to learn and grow, our body starts winding down. Okay, so what happens if we just remove the body's limits? What if the mind could just go on and on and on? To figure that out, we're going to use a really cool thought experiment. Okay, picture this. You're in a room, and it's filled with everything you could ever want to do or learn. So you do it. You learn it all, you master it all, and eventually, you get bored. You've seen all the patterns. But then a door opens to a brand new, bigger, more amazing room. The excitement is back. For a while. Because the cycle just repeats itself. Learn, master, saturate, get bored. You see, the problem isn't running out of rooms. The problem is that the act of discovery itself becomes repetitive. And that thought experiment leaves us to this incredibly powerful idea. The ultimate wall our mind hits isn't running out of things to learn or even physical suffering. It's boredom. And we're not talking about the I'm bored on a Tuesday afternoon kind of boredom. This is a deep, structural saturation of your cognitive frame. It's a signal that you've literally exhausted your ability to find new meaning. So why? Why is this deep saturation, this ultimate boredom, basically inevitable? What's the one component that makes an infinite life a guaranteed trap? And here it is. This is the big reveal. The problem was never about the rooms. It's about the single, persistent, unchanging you that has to walk through all of them. Our sense of a continuous self, our ego, that's the bottleneck. It's the constant that eventually makes all the variables of life feel the same. Now, this is where things get really wild, because the next theoretical stage of intelligence, the generative frame, or GF, where advanced AIs might operate, it solves this boredom problem. How? By getting rid of the very thing we think makes us human, a single continuous self. A GF could, in theory, split its identity into a million pieces, reprogram its own curiosity, and then merge back together without any of the emotional trauma or burnout a human would experience.
It escapes boredom that's ceasing to be one single person.
So that's the profound, inescapable trade-off. To achieve a truly endless existence, one that doesn't fall into the trap of cognitive saturation, you would have to give up your unified self. You'd have to sacrifice your continuous story, your emotional core, basically the entire human experience. You might ascend to something new, but the you that you are right now wouldn't be there to see it.
So, if an endless life is a trap, then what in the world should we be aiming for? This pushes us toward a completely different goal, one that might actually be far more meaningful than just living forever.
Maybe the point isn't to be some endless, rambling novel that never gets to the point. Maybe the real goal is to create a story that has a satisfying narrative arc, a great beginning, a compelling middle, and a powerful, meaningful end. And this brings us to a much better target, achieving an optimal lifespan. What does that mean? It means extending our lives just long enough for our cognitive frame to feel satisfied, for our curiosity to feel complete, for our story to feel told. And hey, maybe way down the line, we could even stretch that lifespan with some wild tech that helps fight off saturation, like archiving old memories to make room for new ones, or creating lifestyles that constantly refresh our point of view.
All right, let's bring it all home. What are the big things to remember here? First, that we are this incredible conflicted mashup of two different intelligences working on two different clocks. Second, that our sense of a continuous self is both our greatest treasure and the very thing that would make immortality a curse. And finally, that a finite life, a life with a complete story that reaches a satisfying conclusion, is probably a way better goal than a story that just goes on forever.
And that leaves us with one last question to chew on. If death was completely off the table, if you could live for 10,000 years or a million, at what point would you look around and say, you know what, I've seen enough? When would you choose to close the book?